At 17, I stood frozen under a street lamp, staring at a creature that shouldn't exist, its red eyes burning into my soul. This is a story of a night that shattered my understanding of reality, a shadow that others have seen too. Take a moment and imagine a lonely road at midnight, where the air hums with an unseen threat. It began with doubt, but ended with a terror I can't unfeel. Since I was 13, I've been haunted by things I couldn't explain. Visions, whispers, sensations that felt too real to dismiss. Feel the weight of those moments, the chill that lingers, long after they're gone. My family has a history of mental illness, a shadow that looms over every strange experience I've had. I learned to brush them off as hallucinations, even when they left me trembling. Have you ever doubted your own mind, wondering if what you saw was real? Now with medication, those episodes are rare, but one encounter at 17 still claws at my thoughts, refusing to be explained away. Picture a night where the line between dream and reality blurs, leaving you questioning everything. It was late, well past midnight, when my family returned from a long vacation. We were exhausted, our large family of 12, 8 of us living in the house, stumbling into our isolated home in the middle of nowhere. See the house, a lone dot in a sea of fields, the nearest neighbor miles away. We agreed to shower before bed, but I volunteered to go last, craving a moment alone. I stepped outside, the only light a faint street lamp casting a pale glow over the driveway. Feel the cool night air, the stillness that wraps around you like a shroud. I sat on the steps, gazing into the darkness when a distant sound caught my ear, the eerie howl of coyotes echoing through the fields. Listen to their cries, a primal song that stirs something deep within. I decided to stay longer, drawn to the haunting melody, but an uneasy feeling began to coil in my stomach, a warning I couldn't ignore. What if the night held more than just coyotes? Then, terror seized me, a wave so intense I couldn't move. My gaze drifted to the road, and there it was. A creature, 10 feet tall, its elongated arms and legs stretching into the shadows, its glowing red eyes piercing the night. Picture it, a thin, skeletal figure hovering a foot above the ground, gliding as if pulled by an unseen force. It moved at the speed of a slow car, its body rigid, its crimson gaze unblinking, fixed on something I couldn't see. Feel your heart? Stop, the air turning to ice in your lungs. It passed by the house silent as a ghost, leaving no trace of sound, no echo of its presence. I stood paralyzed, my body no longer my own, until it vanished into the darkness. Only then did I regain control, bolting inside, my breath ragged, my mind racing. Run, but feel its eyes still on you, even through the walls. I told no one except my doctor, convinced it was another hallucination, a cruel trick of my mind. A year later, I moved in with my sister Elise and her husband Nathan. See their cozy home, a sanctuary far from that lonely road. One night, at 11:30 p.m., Nathan and I went on a bike ride, the cool air brushing against our faces as we shared stories of the strange and unexplainable. Feel the rhythm of the pedals, the thrill of the night ride. I told him about the creature I'd seen, the one I called the Coyote Man, describing its towering frame, its eerie glide. As I spoke of its red eyes, Nathan's expression shifted, his face paling under the moonlight. Watch his eyes widen, the recognition dawning. He raised his hands, forming circles around his eyes, and whispered, "Big red eyes." My stomach dropped. Feel the chill crawl up your spine, the truth too heavy to bear. Nathan revealed that at 19 he'd seen the same creature, right after hearing coyotes howl in the distance. It had chased him, its long limbs closing the gap as he ran for his life, faster than he'd ever moved. Hear his panting, the terror in his voice. He only escaped by climbing a silo, hiding at the top for hours, waiting for it to return. But it never did. I sat there, frozen on my bike, Nathan's words echoing in my mind. Feel the weight of his story, the confirmation of your worst fear. I'd never told anyone but my doctor, yet Nathan had seen it too. What if it wasn't a hallucination, but something real, something hunting in the night? A friend named Mia later told me she'd heard similar tales from hunters in the area. Tall, red-eyed figures stalking the fields after the coyotes called. Hear her voice, low and cautious, as if speaking might summon it. I still don't know what the coyote man was, but its memory haunts me, a shadow I can't outrun. Close your eyes, but see those red eyes glowing in the dark. It wasn't just in my mind. It was out there, waiting. The quiet of early morning, when the world feels soft and safe, the shadows can lie. At 4:30 a.m., in a strange apartment far from home, I saw a face I thought I knew. A face that smiled with a hunger that wasn't human. What I met in that hallway wasn't my friend. It was something else. And it's still out there, wearing her skin. The summer after college, I landed an internship in a sleepy town. A place where time seemed to move slower, the streets empty by dusk. The company housed us in a peculiar apartment. 2 units stitched together with a long, narrow hallway, running like a spine between them. 3 bedrooms and a bathroom flanked each side, the space functional but cold, its walls echoing with the hum of unfamiliarity. This isn't home. I shared the place with a handful of other interns, strangers bound by ambition and late-night study sessions. Toward the end of our assignment, a group presentation loomed, its weight pressing us to prepare relentlessly. We can't fail. The night before, we agreed to wake at 4:30 a.m., head to the office early, and practice until our words were flawless. I rose first, the apartment silent, the air heavy with pre-dawn stillness. Too early for sound. My roommate, a quiet girl I barely knew, stirred in her room, her silhouette moving toward our bathroom. I didn't mind the trek to the other end of the hallway, where a second bathroom waited, its fluorescent light a stark contrast to the dark corridor. Just get ready. I gathered my toiletries, my footsteps muffled on the worn carpet, the hallway stretching endlessly before me. The other bedrooms were empty, their doors closed, the silence so thick it felt alive. No one's awake. I reached the bathroom, set my things on the counter, and froze. My towel. I'd forgotten it in my room, a careless mistake that sent me back into the hallway's gloom. Halfway down, I stopped. She's there. A figure stood in the corridor's center, her back to me, her posture unnaturally still. It was her, my roommate, her familiar frame, her hair tied in the same loose bun. Why is she standing like that? My stomach twisted, a primal warning rising in my chest. The hallway was dark, the only light a faint spill from the bathroom behind. Me. But her presence felt wrong, as if the air around her had thickened, grown heavy with intent. Something's off. My skin prickled, my breath catching as I took a cautious step. The floor creaked under my weight and she turned, slowly, deliberately, her head swiveling while her body remained rooted. That's not her. Her face was hers. Every feature perfect, but her smile was too wide, too sharp. A smirk that gleamed with malice. Her eyes locked onto mine, unblinking, empty, as if they saw through me to something deeper, something she craved. This isn't right. My voice trembled as I stammered, "Hey, what's going on?" But my feet were already retreating, drawn to the bathroom's light like a moth to flame. "Get out!" Her smile widened, her head tilting, but she didn't speak, didn't move. Her gaze pinning me like a specimen. I stumbled into the bathroom, slamming the door, my hands shaking as I turned the lock. She's not human. The fluorescent hum was my only anchor. The hot water tap, a makeshift weapon I clutched in desperation. I sank to the floor, my breath ragged, whispering prayers to a God I wasn't sure I believed in. Don't let her in. The hallway beyond was silent, but I felt her presence. A weight pressing against the door, her smile lingering in the dark. Minutes stretched into eternity, 20, maybe 25, until a knock broke the spell, soft but insistent. She's here. A voice called, not hers but another roommate's, asking if I was done. It's safe. I didn't answer, couldn't, my mind reeling with what I'd seen. I cracked the door, peering into the hallway, now empty. The darkness softer, less oppressive. She's gone. I hurried to my room, my heart still racing, and stopped dead. There she is, my roommate, the real one, stood in her room, brushing her hair, her movements normal, human. I blurted, "You scared me out there," but her face, clouded with confusion. She wasn't in the hallway. She swore she'd been in her room the whole time, preparing for the presentation, her earnest denial cutting through my fear. It wasn't her. I wanted to believe it was a prank, a trick of exhaustion, but she wasn't the type. Focused, serious, as driven as I was. It was too early for games. The presentation consumed us, leaving no room for jest. And she maintained her story until the internship ended, her eyes never holding that predatory gleam. What did I see? The apartment felt different after that, its hallway longer, its shadows deeper. I avoided it at night, kept my door locked, my senses tuned to every sound. She's still out there. In my dreams, I'm back in that corridor, her face, her stolen face, smiling, her hand reaching, her voice a whisper that isn't hers. Come back. I left that town, that apartment, but the memory clings, a question I can't answer. Was it a ghost, a demon, or something older, wearing her skin, waiting for me to return? And in the quiet, I still see her smile gleaming in the dark. The park stretched out like a canvas of innocence, its fields alive with the hum of summer. But some dangers wear the mask of safety. My childhood is a locked chest, its contents hidden behind a veil of trauma I couldn't face. At 21, those contents are spilling out, each memory a shard of glass cutting deeper than the last. One day, buried for over a decade, has returned with a vengeance. A moment when I brushed against evil and walked away, unaware of how close I came to losing everything. This isn't a tale of specters or shadows. It's the story of a man, and the terror he etched into my soul. My early years are a fog, a mosaic of moments I can't piece together. Until I was 12, my past was a sealed vault, its doors bolted by a mind too fragile to hold the weight of what it had seen. But now, those doors are creaking open, and the memories flooding through are sharp, relentless, and unwanted. I'd trade my peace to keep them locked. One afternoon when I was 6 or 7, burns brighter than the rest, a wound that refuses to heal. It was in Oak Ridge Park, a sprawling haven of green where children chased soccer balls, parents lounged under ancient oaks, and kites soared against a boundless sky. That day the sun hung low, painting the grass in hues of gold, but the air carried a heaviness, like the world was holding its breath before a storm. I was with my Uncle Henry and Cousin Miles, who trailed behind me, their voices muffled by the drone of adult conversation. Henry, with his broad shoulders and easy laugh, was a figure of safety, but his slow pace grated on my restless spirit. Miles, a lanky 10-year-old, matched Henry's stride, leaving me to forge ahead, my sneakers pounding the dusty path. I was a child, fearless in the light of day, blind to the shadows waiting. The park was alive. Cicadas sang. A soccer game roared in the distance, and the scent of cut grass filled the air. But as I rounded a bend, the noise seemed to fade, replaced by a stillness that pressed against my chest. It stood out like a scar on the landscape. A shack, pieced together from rusted metal sheets and a sagging garden gate, crouched at the path's edge. Its door hung open, revealing a chaos of blankets, a stained mattress, and scattered junk. Empty bottles, torn papers, a broken chair. The sight was wrong, out of place in the park's cheerful sprawl, and a chill settled in my bones, a warning I couldn't name. Keep moving. But curiosity, that reckless spark of childhood, pulled me closer. I slowed, peering into the shack's dim interior, my heart beating a little faster. Then it came, a low, sharp sound cutting through the cicada's hum. It wasn't a word, but a call, deliberate and meant for me. My head snapped up, and there he was, slouched in the shadows at the back of the shack. A man, gaunt as a specter, his skin weathered to a dull sheen, his hair tangled into knots that seemed to defy gravity. His clothes were tatters, hanging off his frame like a second skin, and a cigarette burned between his fingers, its smoke curling upward in lazy spirals. His eyes, half hidden in the gloom, glinted with something that wasn't kindness. Something that made my stomach twist. "Come here, little one," he said, his voice smooth as oil, slick with an intent I couldn't grasp. "I've got something fun for you." The words slithered, wrapping around me like a trap. I froze, my sneakers rooted to the path, my breath caught in my throat. "Don't talk to strangers." My parents' warning surged forward, a beacon in the rising fog of fear. He leaned closer, his grin revealing teeth stained yellow, jagged like broken glass. "Just a game, you and me. No one has to know." The promise in his voice was heavy, dark, and my body screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. I took a step back, my eyes locked on his. His smile faltered, replaced by a scowl that made his face seem sharper, more predatory. "Don't be shy," he snapped, his tone biting now, angry. He tossed the cigarette aside, its ember flaring briefly on the ground, and stood, his movements quick and purposeful. The gate creaked as he pushed it open, his eyes never leaving me. "Run, run now." Panic surged, but my body was a statue, trapped by the weight of his gaze. My heart pounded, a frantic rhythm drowning out the world, and I wanted to scream. But my voice was gone, swallowed by terror. Then the world shifted. Gravel crunched behind me, sharp and grounding. Henry and Miles, finally catching up, their voices breaking through the haze. "Ava, wait up," Henry called, his tone light, unaware. The man froze, his gaze darting to them, his face twisting with frustration. He muttered something low, venomous, then retreated into the shack, the gate swinging shut with a dull thud. He couldn't touch me, not with them there. I ran to Henry, grabbing his hand, my fingers trembling, but I didn't speak. How do you explain a fear you don't understand? We walked home, the park fading into the distance, and I buried the memory, sealing it away with the fragments of my childhood. It was just a man, nothing more. For years, I held that lie, convincing myself the encounter was a fleeting scare, a moment best forgotten. But the days that followed were a blur, as if my mind had decided to erase the shack and the man within it, tucking them into a corner where they couldn't touch me. But some things don't stay buried. As a child, I went back to Oak Ridge Park, chasing friends across the fields, climbing trees, and laughing under the summer sun. The shack was still there, a fixture at the park's edge, but I avoided it, my feet instinctively steering me away. It was just a place, nothing more, I told myself, and the memory of that afternoon faded, swallowed by the carefree chaos of youth. Yet, even then I felt it, a lingering unease, a shadow that clung to the edges of my joy, waiting for the moment to resurface. Growing up, I carried that shadow without knowing it. My teenage years were marked by a quiet anxiety, a reluctance to wander too far from home, a habit of checking over my shoulder when I walked alone. It's just how I am, I thought, brushing off the tightness in my chest as a quirk, a part of me that didn't need explaining. Oak Ridge became a place I visited, less often. Its fields no longer a playground, but a reminder of something I couldn't name. My friends noticed, teasing me for skipping their park hangouts, but I'd make excuses. Homework, chores, anything to avoid the paths that wound too close to that rusted shack. Deep down, I knew why, but I wouldn't let myself think it. Let me take you to another summer when I was 9. It was a humid evening, the kind where the air sticks to your skin and the cicadas sing louder than your thoughts. My best friend, Clara, begged me to join her at Oak Ridge for a game of hide-and-seek with the neighborhood kids. I hesitated, my stomach twisting, but her infectious laugh wore me down. It's just a game, I told myself, pushing away the unease. We ran through the park, weaving between trees, our giggles echoing as the sun dipped below the horizon. I found a hiding spot behind a cluster of bushes, crouching low, my heart racing with the thrill of the game. But as I waited, the world grew quiet, the laughter fading into a stillness that pressed against my ears. Something was watching. I felt it, a weight on my back, like eyes boring into me from the darkness. I turned, expecting to see Clara or another kid, but the bushes were empty, the park silent except for the faint hum of insects. My gaze drifted to the shack, its silhouette stark against the twilight. It's nothing, I whispered, but my hands trembled as I stood. Then I saw it, a flicker of movement inside the shack, a shape shifting in the shadows. My breath caught, and I bolted, running toward the safety of the group, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Clara found me, laughing at my flushed face, but I didn't tell her. I didn't want to scare her or myself. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the memory of the shack gnawing at me. It was just my imagination, I told myself, but the feeling lingered, a cold knot in my chest that wouldn't loosen. I stopped going to Oak Ridge after that, choosing instead to stay in my backyard, where the world felt smaller, safer. But safety is an illusion, isn't it? The years passed and I built a life, school, friends, a job at a local cafe, but the anxiety never left. It was a quiet companion, whispering doubts whenever I walked alone, urging me to lock doors, to avoid dark streets, to trust no one. Fast forward to last week when everything changed. I was at home scrolling through my phone when my mom called me to the kitchen. Her face was a mix of relief and something heavier, a weight I didn't understand until she spoke. "The vagrant by the school died," she said, her voice steady, but laced with something raw. "Good riddance, he hurt a lot of girls back then." The words hit like a stone, sinking into my gut. "What vagrant?" I asked, though a part of me already knew. She described the shack, the park, the school across the street where children played, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. It was him. The memory flooded back, unbidden and merciless. I saw the shack, the man, his glinting eyes and yellowed teeth. I felt the weight of his gaze, the slick promise in his voice the moment I stepped back and he lunged. He wanted me. The realization was a blade, slicing through the lies I'd told myself for years. I pressed my mom for details, my voice shaking as I asked about the man, the shack, the girls. He was a predator, she said, her eyes dark with memory. He lived in that shack for years, preying on kids. The police never caught him, not really. He just disappeared until now. Another memory claws its way up from when I was 10. I was at the library, flipping through books, when I overheard two women whispering at a nearby table. They found another girl, unsaid, her voice low, in the park near that shack. I didn't understand then, didn't connect the words to my own life, but now they burn, a truth I wasn't ready to face. He was always there, wasn't he? The thought is a violation, a stain that seeps into every memory of Oak Ridge. I asked my mom if she was sure, if it was the same man. Yes, she said, her voice final. It was him. The days since have been a haze of fear and revelation. He's dead, but he's not gone. I see him in every shadow, every dark corner. I check my locks 3 times before bed, my hands trembling as I turn the bolts. Oak Ridge, once a place of joy, is a graveyard of what could have been. A place where innocents went to die. I was so close to being one of his victims. The thought loops in my mind, a relentless chant that keeps me awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the next memory to surface. Let me tell you about another moment when I was 13. I was at a sleepover, giggling with friends as we swapped scary stories under blankets. One girl, Sarah, told of a man in Oak Ridge who took kids away. He lived in a shack, she whispered, her eyes wide. My mom said he was a monster. I laughed then, dismissing it as a ghost story, but my laughter was hollow, a mask for the unease stirring inside. Why did it feel so familiar? Now I see it. Sarah's story was another piece of the puzzle, a warning my mind wasn't ready to hear. The more I learned, the more the shack grew in my mind. No longer just a place, but a symbol, a gaping maw that had swallowed so many. I had to see it again. The thought came unbidden, a reckless urge I couldn't shake. Oak Ridge was only a few miles from my apartment, its fields still green, its paths still winding. Maybe facing it will set me free, I told myself, though my hands shook at the idea. I waited for a bright morning, when the sun would strip away the shadows, and drove to the park, my heart a drumbeat in my chest. Oak Ridge hadn't changed much. The soccer fields buzzed with kids, the oaks stood tall, and the air carried the same scent of grass and summer. But the shack was gone, replaced by a patch of bare earth, as if the park had tried to erase its own scars. I parked near the path where it had stood, my hands gripping the steering wheel. Just look, Ava, then leave. I stepped out, the sun warm, on my skin, but the air felt heavy, charged with a memory that refused to fade. I walked the path, my sneakers crunching on gravel, each step pulling me closer to the spot where I'd stood all those years ago. It was here. The bare earth stared back, unyielding, but I saw it. The shack, the gate, the man. His voice echoed in my mind, slick and dangerous, promising games I didn't understand. Come inside, little one. My breath hitched, and I closed my eyes, willing the image away. He's gone, he can't hurt you. But when I opened my eyes, the park felt different, its brightness a lie. Something's watching. The thought was irrational, but it rooted me to the spot, my skin prickling as if the ground itself held his gaze. Run, Ava. Run now. I turned, half expecting to see him standing there, but the path was empty, the park alive with the sounds of children playing. I hurried back to my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. It's over, I told myself, but the fear followed me home, a passenger I couldn't shake. That night I dreamed of the shack, its gate swinging open, his shadow stretching toward me. I woke gasping, the room too dark, the silence too heavy. He's dead, but he's still here. Another story surfaces from when I was 16. I was at a community fair helping at a bake sale when I overheard two men talking about Oak Ridge. "They should have bulldozed that whole park," one said. "Too many bad things happened there." I froze, my hands pausing over a tray of cookies, the memory stirring but not yet clear. What bad things? I wanted to ask, but I didn't. Now I know. They were talking about him, about the girls, about the shack that tainted everything it touched. The dreams kept coming, each one sharper, more vivid. He's not just a memory, he's a part of me. I tried to fight it, to fill my days with work, friends, anything to drown out the past. But the shack was a wound that wouldn't close, a reminder that safety is a fragile thing, easily shattered. I started talking to a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Ellis who listened as I poured out the story. "You survived," she said, her voice steady. "That's your strength." But survival felt like a hollow victory when the fear still held me captive. Let me tell you about another moment when I was 18. I was at a college orientation surrounded by new faces when a guest speaker talked about trauma. "It lives in your body," she said, "until you face it." I shifted in my seat, uncomfortable, the shack flickering in my mind. Face it how? I wondered, but I pushed the thought away, not ready to confront the truth. Now I'm trying, but facing it feels like stepping into a void, a place where the man in the shack still waits. I reached out to Margaret again, the woman from the history group, asking if she'd share more about Emily. "She's healing," Margaret wrote, "but it's a long road." Emily had found solace in art, painting the park as a way to reclaim it, to strip away its power. Could I do that? I wondered, staring at the blank walls of my apartment. I bought a sketchbook, started drawing. Oak Ridge, the shack, the man. Each stroke was a battle, a way to externalize the fear, to give it shape so I could fight it. This is mine, not his. The community began to heal too in its own way. I found a local group advocating for park safety. Their meetings filled with parents, survivors, and activists. "We can't change the past," one woman said, "but we can protect the future." I joined them, my voice shaky at first, sharing my story without naming the man. "I was almost one of them," I said, and the room fell silent, their eyes reflecting my own pain. Together we pushed for better lighting, more patrols, a memorial for the girls who'd suffered. Their names deserve to be remembered. One last memory from last month. I was walking home from work, the street quiet, when I passed a playground. A girl, no older than 6, ran past, her laughter bright against the dusk. I stopped, watching her, and felt a surge of protectiveness, a vow to keep her safe. No one else will feel that fear. The man in the shack took so much, but he didn't take my strength, my voice, my will to fight back. Now I live with the memories, but I'm learning to carry them differently. He's gone, but his shadow lingers, a reminder of what I survived. Oak Ridge is still there. Its fields green, its paths winding, but it's no longer just a graveyard. It's a place where I faced my fear, where I found my voice. Some wounds never heal, but they can make you stronger. I'll never forget the man in the shack, but I won't let him define me. The past is heavy, but I'm learning to carry it, one step at a time. A strange light pulsed through the house, not from the moon or the street lamps, but from something alive, slithering through the walls like a heartbeat stolen from the void. Callista felt it first, a shiver clawing up her spine as the glow seeped beneath the curtains, bathing the living room in an unearthly sheen. It was supposed to be a simple night. Friends gathered, a film cued, the comfort of Mira's suburban home. But that light marked the moment the ordinary shattered, unveiling a presence that claimed the shadows as its dominion. Callista, 30, had always been attuned to the unexplained, her senses sharpened by years of flickering candles and whispers in empty rooms. She'd joined Mira, her closest friend, and Mira's husband Ronan for an evening of respite, a chance to escape the weight of the world. Finn, their 4-year-old son, slept upstairs, his gentle snores a faint echo through the floorboards. Celine, their 4-week-old daughter, rested in a wicker basket beside the sofa, her tiny breaths a soft rhythm under a knitted blanket. The trio had dimmed the lights, drawn the heavy curtains, and sank into the plush couch, the TV's pale flicker their only beacon in the dark. Feel that moment, the warmth of shared laughter, the illusion of safety, pierced by a sound that doesn't belong. Ronan, ever the protective father, had gone to check on Finn, his footsteps creaking on the stairs. As he descended, a chime, like delicate glass bells, rang from the bedroom above, clear and unplaceable. "That's odd," he said, his voice tight, dismissing it as a draft. But Callista's stomach twisted, a wave of nausea surging as if the house exhaled a malice that wasn't there before. The air grew heavier, the room's warmth leaching away. 5 minutes later, as they settled to start the film, a blaze erupted outside, sharp, blinding, like a spotlight ripping through. The night, Callista and Mira leapt to the window, peeling back the curtains with trembling hands. The family's car, parked in the driveway, stood locked and silent, yet its beams flared with an intensity that burned their eyes, holding steady for 15 seconds before fading to black. See it now. The car alive, its eyes glaring through. The dark, as if it sees your soul. They stood frozen, breaths shallow, exchanging glances that spoke of disbelief and dread. The beams surged again, longer this time. Then the hazard lights pulsed, erratic, like a signal from something beyond. As the light ceased, a scream tore through the house. Finn, upstairs, his cries raw, choking, as if he'd stared into the abyss. Hear that sound? A child's terror echoing the will of something unseen. Ronan bolted upstairs, his footsteps a frantic drumbeat, while Mira scooped Celine from her basket, the infant's soft whimpers rising. Callista followed, her pulse hammering, the nausea swelling into a suffocating dread that pressed against her chest. Ronan returned, cradling Finn, the boy's face ghostly pale, tears streaming down his cheeks. His words came in fragments, stammers, of dark and face, his small body trembling as he clung to his father. Mira rocked him, her voice a shaky lullaby, but Finn's eyes darted to the corners, wide with a fear too vast for a child. As they huddled, the TV flickered, its screen plunging into darkness without warning, the hum of its power silenced. A deep thud reverberated from above, shaking the ceiling, as if something heavy had fallen or moved. Then silence, a silence so thick it seemed to pulse, hiding what stirred in the shadows. Imagine that weight, the quiet a mask for what watches, its intent a secret you can't grasp. They gathered in the living room, voices low as if afraid to wake the thing that lingered. For hours they dissected the night, their words stumbling over the impossible. The car keys lay untouched in the kitchen, far from hands or curious pets. Callista and Ronan ventured outside, the night air biting their skin. The car stood locked, its surface pristine, no signs of tampering. The manual offered no answers. Online searches found nothing about beams or hazards activating alone. The vehicle, nearly new, showed no faults, no warning lights, its technology as baffled as they were. What defies logic, turning your tools into vessels of the unknown? The house, once a haven, felt like a trap, its walls alive with a presence that mocked their attempts at reason. The aftermath was relentless. Finn refused sleep, his once bright eyes shadowed, scanning corners as if expecting the face to return. Celine, so peaceful before, woke nightly, her cries sharp and desperate, cutting through the dark. More thuds came, faint but deliberate, from the attic's unseen depths, each one a reminder that the house was no longer theirs. Mira's voice broke as she recalled a night weeks earlier, when Finn had woken, whispering of a shadow man by his bed, his small voice trembling. With fear, she'd dismissed it as a nightmare, but the words now clawed at her, each syllable a warning she'd ignored. Callista, too, shared a memory, a candle in her apartment flaring without wind, a voice murmuring her name in an empty room, soft but unmistakable. What lingers in the spaces we call safe? Its form, a secret we can't name. Ronan, the skeptic, suggested electrical faults, but his hands shook as he spoke, his practicality crumbling under the weight of the unknown. Days passed, but the house grew stranger. Callista noticed a mark on the bedroom door frame, a faint smudge like ash or soot, its edges irregular, as if traced by a hand that wasn't human. It hadn't been there before, or had they missed it? She wiped it away, but the texture clung to her fingers, gritty, almost alive. Mira found Finn's wooden horse, a cherished toy, inexplicably moved to the attic stairs, its painted eyes dulled, as if something had drained its vibrancy. One night, Selene's basket rocked faintly, though no breeze stirred the room, the motion slow, deliberate, as if cradled by unseen hands. Picture it, your home turning against you, its objects animated by a will not your own. Callista's nausea returned, a sickness that wasn't hers, as if the house rejected their presence, its air thick with the scent of dust and something older, decay perhaps, or the musk of forgotten graves. The trio delved into the house's history, scouring local records for answers. A whisper emerged, a tenant decades ago who'd vanished after reporting strange lights and sounds. Their fate a mystery. Was it their presence, lingering, claiming the house as its own? Callista, once drawn to the unknown, now dreaded its truth. Mira and Ronan considered moving, but the thuds grew louder, the car's lights more frequent, as if the entity sensed their fear and fed on it. Finn's drawings, once full of color, now showed only black scribbles, a faceless figure. Looming in the margins, Delaney's cries took on a rhythm, almost a melody, as if responding to a call only she could hear. Callista couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, her skin prickling under an invisible gaze. One night, alone in the living room, she saw, a flicker in the mirror, a shadow too tall, too wrong, its edges dissolving when she turned. She didn't speak of it, but Mira's eyes held the same fear, Ronan's hands the same tremor. The house was no longer a home. It was a vessel, its walls a canvas for something ancient, restless, and unkind. As you sit in your own space tonight, feel the air around you. What light pulses in the dark, waiting to claim its due? Laughter lingered in the air, warm and fleeting, as the night promised nothing but joy. Clara steered the family sedan through the winding roads of rural Tennessee, the glow of a 4th of July party fading in her rearview mirror. It was July 2019, and the evening had been perfect. Fireworks bursting over a friend's backyard, her husband Tom swapping stories with old co-workers, their 9-year-old daughter Lily chasing fireflies with sticky fingers. At 36, Clara savored these moments, rare anchors in a life often rushed. But now, 10:40 p.m., the road stretched unfamiliar, a maze of country lanes 45 minutes from home. The GPS's robotic voice was her only guide. its screen casting a pale glow across the dashboard, the world beyond swallowed by darkness. The roads were deserted, the kind of quiet that felt like a held breath. No streetlights pierced the night, only Clara's headlights slicing through the void, catching the gnarled silhouettes of trees lining the two-lane road. Tom dozed in the passenger seat, his head against the window, while Lily hummed softly in the back, her eyelids heavy. Clara kept her speed steady, just a touch over the limit, the hum of the engine a steady pulse. She glanced at the rearview mirror, expecting nothing but black, and froze. Headlights glared back, sudden and blinding, inches from her bumper. A dark vehicle, hunter green or charcoal gray, had materialized from nowhere. Its presence aggressive, almost alive. Her heart lurched. Where did it come from? She tightened her grip on the wheel, her knuckles pale, and checked her speed. The car stayed close, neither passing nor falling back, its headlights a relentless pressure. Clara's mind raced, just some impatient driver. But the road was empty, no other cars for miles, and the silence beyond the engine felt wrong, as if the night were watching. The longest stretch lay ahead, a winding tree-lined curve that twisted like a serpent, its arc so gradual she could see a mile into the distance. No turnoffs, no shoulders, just road and forest, a tunnel through the dark. The car clung to her tail, unyielding, its driver invisible behind the glare. Clara's throat tightened, but she kept her eyes forward, willing the curve to end. Then it was gone. Halfway through the curve, Clara glanced at the mirror and saw nothing. No headlights, no taillights, no trace of the car. The road behind stretched empty, a black ribbon under the faint moonlight. Her breath caught, a chill prickling her skin. She nudged Tom, her voice low. "Did you see that car?" He stirred, blinking, and twisted to look back. "Nothing there," he muttered, his brow furrowing. Lily, half asleep, murmured, "What car, Mommy?" Clara's pulse hammered. It was right there. She scanned the road, her flashlight beam darting across the trees, but the forest gave no answers, its shadows dense and unmoving. The GPS beeped, pulling her focus, and she pushed the incident aside, her hands trembling on the wheel. A half-mile later, the curve gave way to a stop sign, the road to the highway just a left turn away. Clara slowed, the intersection empty. No cars in either direction. She exhaled, the tension easing, her foot hovering over the gas. Almost home. Then it came. A sharp, deliberate knock on the back driver's side window like knuckles rapping on glass. Clara's heart stopped, her eyes snapping to the side mirror. Nothing. No figure, no movement, just darkness. Another knock, softer, closer, to the car's center as if testing her resolve. She turned to Tom, her voice shaking. "Did you hear that?" He frowned, leaning back, but saw nothing. Lily's eyes widened, her voice small. "Mommy, what was that?" Clara's skin crawled, her mind screaming to move. "Just nothing," she said, forcing calm, and pressed the gas, making the left turn. As the car pulled away, Clara glanced. "See back one last time." Headlights flared to life right where they'd stopped, illuminating the road. Two figures, vague and shadowy, moved toward a dark vehicle. The same one, she was sure. Her stomach dropped, a wave of nausea washing over her. They were there the whole time. The figures vanished as she rounded a bend, the highway's lights a distant promise. Clara drove in silence, her hands trembling, her mind replaying the knocks, the headlights, the figures. She hadn't opened the window, hadn't stopped to look, and that choice felt like a thread between safety and something unspeakable. The road wasn't just a path home. It was a warning, and she'd heeded. it just in time. Deep in the forest of Mount Chesta, I heard a sound that wasn't from this world, a melody that led me to something I can't unsee. This is a tale of a hike that turned into a haunting encounter, a presence that lingers in my nightmares. Take a deep breath and imagine a mountain trail at dusk, where the silence feels alive, watching your every step. It began with adventure, but ended with a terror that shattered my skepticism. I'd recently moved to Weed, California, a quiet town nestled beside Mount Chesta, for a new job. Feel the excitement of a fresh start, the promise of new horizons. As an avid hiker, I couldn't resist the call of the mountain, its rugged peaks a playground for exploration. 2 days ago, on a rare day off, I decided to conquer its trails, eager to lose myself in nature's embrace. See the mountain in your mind, its slopes dusted with pine, the air crisp with possibility. Without much thought, I drove my car deep into the forest at the mountain's base, following a winding dirt road until it could go no further. Hear the crunch of gravel under your tires, the forest closing in around you. It was 3 p.m., the sky a brilliant blue, the sun casting golden rays through the canopy. I stepped out, my boots sinking into the earth, and began my ascent, the chirping of birds and the chatter of squirrels filling the air. Breathe in the scent of pine and moss, the kind that fills your lungs with life. The hike felt like any other, peaceful, invigorating, a dance with the wilderness I'd always loved. But as I reached a dried-up riverbed, its cracked bed stretching like a scar across the mountain, everything changed. Pause. Feel the shift, the air growing heavy with an unspoken warning. I stopped to take pictures, the shutter of my camera cutting through the stillness, when I realized the forest had gone silent. Listen to the absence, the way it presses against your ears. No birds sang, no squirrels scampered, not even the whisper of wind that usually danced through the trees. It was as if the mountain had held its breath, waiting for something to happen. What if the silence was a sign, a prelude to something you weren't meant to see? I brushed it off as a strange coincidence, my boots crunching against the dry riverbed as I continued upward. But a creeping sensation took hold. I felt watched. Not the fleeting glance of a curious animal, but the weight of countless eyes, studying my every move, dissecting my presence. Feel the prickle on your neck, the sense of being seen from all sides. I'd never felt anything like it, a dread so primal it rooted me to the spot. Yet I pressed on, unable to shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Then, out of nowhere, a sound pierced the silence, a haunting melody like angelic humming, but laced with an electric undertone, the kind you'd hear from old telephone lines on a quiet night. Hear it now, a song with no words, both beautiful and wrong, pulling at your soul. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to draw my gaze across the riverbed, to the dense trees on the other side. There, standing among the foliage, was a figure, pure white, its form shimmering as if made of light, yet solid, undeniable. Picture it, a being in a flowing robe, its oval head faceless, its body a strange blend of porcelain and silk. I couldn't see its hands, its feet, or its face, but I felt its gaze intense and unyielding, as if it were memorizing every detail of me. Feel your heart race, the air turning to ice in your chest. It wasn't human, nothing about it belonged to this world. I stood frozen, locked in its stare for what felt like an eternity, though it was likely only 20 or 30 seconds. What if it knew you, saw through you, claimed you in that moment? Desperate to escape, I took a slow step backward, my boots trembling against the earth. The creature tilted its head, a gesture of curiosity or surprise, and the humming grew louder, its electric edge vibrating in my bones. Feel the sound wrap around you, a melody that traps you in its grip. I turned to check my path, ensuring I could run, and in that instant the humming stopped. Abrupt, jarring, leaving a void that shocked me to my core. Here the silence return, sharper than before, a void that screams. I whipped my head back, but the creature was gone, vanished without a trace as if it had never been there. Look, but see nothing, the absence more terrifying than its presence. Panic surged through me and I ran, my boots pounding the trail, branches clawing at my skin. Run, but feel the eyes still on you, following from every shadow. The forest remained, silent, the weight of being watched pressing harder with every step until I reached my car. As I fumbled with the keys, the sounds of the mountain returned. Birds, wind, life, as if nothing had happened. Breathe, but feel the terror still clinging to your skin. I drove away as fast as I could, the mountain shrinking in my rearview mirror, but its shadow stayed with me. I've never experienced anything paranormal before, and I've always been a skeptic, but this encounter broke something in me. A friend named Nora, who grew up near Mount Chesta, told me of local legends, white entities that haunt the mountain, appearing when the forest falls silent, their songs a lure for the unwary. Hear her voice, low and trembling, as if the mountain might hear her. I haven't returned to that trail, and I don't think I ever will. The creature haunts my dreams, its faceless gaze burned into my mind. Close your eyes, but see it still, standing in the trees waiting for you to return. I don't know what it was, but I know it saw me, and I fear it's still watching. In the wild, you fear bears or broken bones, but the real danger wears a human face. Last weekend, I camped alone by a mountain lake, seeking solitude. Instead, I found a man whose eyes held no soul, whose presence turned my sanctuary into a trap. He's gone now, but I still feel his gaze waiting for me in the dark. The long weekend promised freedom, a chance to lose myself in the mountains. At 27, I'd grown to love solo backpacking. The rhythm of my boots on the trail, the whisper of wind through pines. The second night, I pitched my tent by a high-elevation lake, its surface a mirror for the stars. The area was accessible by a short trail, so a few other campers dotted the shore, their voices mingling with the calls of day hikers and fishermen. Late afternoon bathed the lake in golden light, and I settled by my tent, a book in hand, the world feeling perfect. Nothing could touch me here, or so I thought. A man passed by, mid-20s, carrying a fishing pole and a small cooler. His presence, barely registered, a fleeting shadow in my peripheral vision. I kept reading, the words blurring as the sun dipped lower. 10 minutes later, he returned, his steps slower, deliberate. "He's back." He stopped, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Hi." I nodded, offering a polite smile, and turned back to my book, hoping he'd move on. But he didn't. Without a word, he sat on a stump just feet away, his body angled toward me, invading the fragile bubble of my space. This isn't right. My pulse quickened, a warning flickering in my chest. He spoke again, his tone laced with a strange amusement. Not quite questions, but statements that felt like probes. "So, you're just reading, huh?" His eyes slid past me, landing on my tent. "Staying here alone tonight, aren't you?" The words hung heavy, their implication a cold weight in my stomach. I froze, my voice caught in my throat. He knows I'm alone. His eyes were dark, empty, drilling into me with an intensity that felt predatory. I managed a weak, "Yep," my fingers tightening on the book, pretending to read while my mind screamed for him to leave. He didn't. Instead, he pulled a beer from his cooler, the can hissing as he opened it, and lit a cigarette, blowing smoke in my direction. The act was Deliberate, a challenge, his gaze never wavering. He's testing me. My skin crawled, every instinct urging me to run. But fear rooted me in place, my words reduced to shallow breaths. I couldn't speak, couldn't tell him to go. His presence was a violation, his dead-eyed stare stripping away my sense of safety. Another hiker approached, striking up a conversation with the man, and I seized the chance. I grabbed my water filter and bladder, mumbling something about needing water, and fled to the lake's edge. I filtered water slowly, my hands trembling, watching him from the corner of my eye. He'd moved to sit with the new hiker, but his gaze kept flicking toward me, unblinking, unrelenting. He's still watching. I returned to my tent, my heart pounding, and crawled inside, pulling the rainfly back to watch the sunset. For 20 minutes, the world felt normal again, the lake's calm soothing my nerves. I organized my gear, my mind drifting, until a shadow fell over the tent. He was there. He stood inches from the door, his face looming, his lips curling into a laugh. Fake, hollow. A sound that turned my blood to ice. "This is just really funny," he said, his voice dripping with malice. I choked out, "I'm taking a nap now. Good night." My voice barely audible, praying he'd leave. He laughed again, the sound lingering as he walked away. I didn't sleep. I clutched my pocket knife, its weight a fragile comfort, and wrote down his last name, scrawled on his cooler, and where he'd said he was from, storing it in my phone just in case. In case of what? The thought was too heavy to face. He wandered the camp into the night, his figure a dark blur against the firelight, his eyes always finding me. I debated packing up, fleeing into the dark, but the thought of crossing his path alone kept me rooted. I left at dawn, my tent packed in minutes, the lake's beauty tainted by his presence. He wasn't just a creep. Something about him felt wrong, as if he carried a darkness deeper than human malice. I've faced bears, storms, and injuries in the wild, but nothing unsettled me like those eyes, that laugh. I'll camp again, but never there. And in my dreams, he's still out there, watching from the trees, his laugh echoing in the night. The city streets glittered under the streetlights, promising safety in their glow. But some shadows move faster than light. Last week, I learned that lesson the hard way, in a moment that tore through my sense of security like a blade through silk. It was a night like any other, or so I thought, until a stranger's gaze locked onto me and the world I knew unraveled. This isn't a nightmare you wake from. This is real, and it's still with me. The clock had ticked past 11:12 p.m. when I left my friend's apartment, the air cool and sharp with the bite of early spring. Walking alone at night never felt right, so I opted for the tram, its fluorescent lights and hum of motion a shield against the dark. I settled into a seat, my phone buzzing with a text from my boyfriend Daniel, asking if I was okay. "On the tram, almost home," I typed, my fingers quick, my mind already drifting to the warmth of my apartment. But then I felt it, a prickle on my neck, like the air had shifted, grown heavier. I looked up, and there he was, a man sitting across from me, his eyes fixed on mine. He hadn't been there when I boarded, or maybe I hadn't noticed. He's just a passenger, I told myself, but his stare was unyielding, sharp, like he was peeling back my layers. His face was angular, shadowed by a hood, his hands restless in his lap. Something's wrong. The thought was a whisper, but it grew louder as he leaned forward, his lips curling into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I gripped my phone, texting Daniel. Guy on tram acting weird. My thumb hovered over the send button, hesitating. But I hit it, needing someone to know. "Get out, Sophie, now." I stood, my legs unsteady, and moved toward the tram's door as it slowed for the next stop. The man stood too, his movements fluid, deliberate, and followed me out into the night. The platform was empty, the city's pulse distant, and my heart began to race. He's just going the same way, I reasoned. But he matched my pace, not behind me but beside me, close enough that I could smell the faint tang of sweat and smoke on him. I quickened my steps, crossing the avenue toward my building, my breath shallow. He didn't cross with me, and for a moment I exhaled, thinking I'd been paranoid. Don't look back. But I did, and there he was, crossing the street now, his silhouette sharp against the streetlights. He moved ahead, passing me, his stride too casual, too controlled. He's just walking, I told myself, but my gut screamed otherwise. Near my building, he stopped, leaning against a lamppost, his eyes locking onto me again. "Got a boyfriend?" he asked, his voice low, almost a growl. I forced a smile, my voice trembling. "Yes, sorry. Good night." Polite, distant, hoping to diffuse whatever this was. He nodded, but his eyes didn't leave me, and he started walking again, staying just ahead. Keep him in sight. I slowed my pace, letting distance grow between us, my fingers fumbling in my bag for my keys. I'd thought they were in my pocket, but they weren't, and panic surged as I rummaged, my hands shaking so badly I could barely feel the metal. He's still walking. "You're fine." But the pathway to my building's lobby felt like a trap, its narrow walls closing in. I glanced back. He was gone, the street empty. "You're safe." I reached the glass door, my keys finally in hand, and unlocked it, my heart pounding as I stepped inside. Closed the door. Now. I pushed it shut, but the magnetic lock hadn't engaged, its faint hum absent. Something's wrong. Before I could react, a shadow loomed and the door flew open, the man charging through with a force that sent my heart into my throat. His eyes were wide, wild, burning with a hatred I couldn't comprehend. "This is real," I screamed, the sound raw, tearing through the silence, and it was the only thing that kept me alive. He lunged, his hands slamming me to the ground, his fingers closing around my throat. "You're going to die." The thought was clear, cold, as his grip tightened, cutting off my air. His face was inches from mine, his eyes bulging, filled with a rage that felt personal, though I'd never seen him before. I clawed at his hands, my small frame no match for his strength, my vision darkening at the edges. No one's coming. The lobby was silent, the building asleep, and I thought of Daniel, of my mom, of the life I wouldn't finish. Time stretched, each second an eternity, until my body went limp, consciousness slipping away. Then light. I opened my eyes, gasping, the pressure gone. The caretaker's wife, Mrs. Carter, knelt beside me, her face pale, her hands steadying me. You're okay, she said, but her voice trembled. Mr. Carter, the caretaker, was running out the door, chasing the man who'd fled into the night. He's gone. I sat up, my throat raw, my body shaking, the world tilting around me. Mrs. Carter held me, her warmth anchoring me to reality, and I cried, the sound ragged, grateful, terrified. The police arrived quickly, their lights flashing, through the glass door. We got him, an officer said, his voice calm but firm. They'd caught the man 10 minutes away thanks to Mr. Carter's description and a security camera that captured his pursuit. He was real, and he was caught. But when I faced him in the station, his denial was a fresh wound. I didn't do anything, he said, his voice flat, his eyes avoiding mine. The video showed him following me, pushing the door, attacking me, but he denied it all, as if my pain was nothing. Why me? The question haunts me. He didn't rob me, didn't touch me beyond the chokehold, didn't take anything but my sense of safety. He wanted me dead. The thought is a void, impossible to grasp, and the police had no answers. Some people are just broken, an officer said, but it wasn't enough. I thanked Mr. Carter and his wife, their faces etched with the same fear I felt. You screamed, and we heard, Mrs. Carter said. That's what saved you. But no one else in the building had called, no one else had come, and that silence cuts deeper than the attack. Let me take you back to another night, years ago. I was 17, walking home from a movie, when a man followed me for 3 blocks. I ran, losing him in a crowd, but the fear stayed. A seed planted long before this attack. Was it him? I'll never know, but the memory is a mirror reflecting the same terror I felt at the glass door. Now I don't walk alone at night. I check my locks, my windows, my life. He's in jail, but he's still here. In the shadows I can't escape. The nightmares that wake me gasping. Some fears don't end, they just change shape. A cold touch grazed Erwin's neck. Not the brush of a breeze or a stray lock of hair, but the deliberate press of icy fingers, as if the dark itself had reached out to claim her. She froze in the dim hallway of her home, her breath catching, the air thickening with a presence that seemed to pulse alongside her heartbeat. It was a quiet afternoon, meant for mundane tasks and the solace of routine, but that touch ignited a dread that turned her sanctuary into a labyrinth of shadows, where every corner hid a force that refused to be named. Erwin, 32, had always been attuned to the edges of the unknown, her senses sharpened by childhood nights when doors creaked without cause and whispers drifted from empty rooms. She shared a modest house with her partner, Torin, a man whose quiet strength masked a fragile heart, plagued by breathing troubles that often left him gasping in the night. Their life was woven with simple rhythms, the soft patter of their cat, Sable, roaming the rooms, the hum of daily chores, the warmth of shared evenings. That day, Erwin had spent hours assembling a sofa bed in the spare room, a task that filled the house with the clatter of tools and the scent of fresh wood. Torin was at work, leaving her alone with Sable, who perched on the living room couch, her amber eyes locked on the hallway. Feel that gaze, the cat's stare, unblinking, piercing the veil of what you cannot see. Sable's fur bristled, her tail twitching, and Erwin followed her line of sight. In the spare room's doorway, a black silhouette flickered, its edges frayed like smoke vanishing in a heartbeat. It wasn't terrifying. More startling, a fleeting glitch in the light, but it left a weight in her chest, a whisper that something had taken notice. The house grew restless in the days that followed, its familiar corners turning foreign as if the walls themselves held secrets they refused to share. Erwin and Torin woke one night, their bodies rigid, pulled from sleep by an unseen force. The air was thick, charged with an eerie anticipation, as if the house screamed a silent warning of something dreadful approaching. Hear that silence, heavy with dread, a prelude to what stalks the dark. Then a sound, a slow, heavy scraping, like a weight dragging across the hardwood floor, crawled from the hallway toward their bedroom. Erwin's heart pounded, her breath shallow as she clutched the covers, Torin's hand gripping hers, his knuckles white. Sable, curled at their feet, hissed softly, her eyes glinting with fear fixed on the door. The scraping grew closer, deliberate, each drag a pulse that echoed in their bones. It stopped just outside their room, the silence that followed worse than any sound, a void that seemed to watch, its presence a tangible force pressing against their skin. Nothing entered, but the weight lingered, as if the entity paused, savoring their fear. The disturbances multiplied, each one bolder, more invasive, as if the house had become a stage for a malevolent performer. In the kitchen, Erwin felt her, hair tugged, a sharp yank that stung her scalp, though the room was empty, the air cold and still. Torin reported the same, his voice unsteady, his dark hair ruffled as if by unseen fingers, his eyes darting to corners where nothing stood. Quick footsteps echoed from the hallway, rushing toward the kitchen where they prepared dinner, only to halt at the threshold, as if an invisible figure stood watching, its gaze a blade against their backs. See it now, the empty doorway alive, its silence a stare that chills your soul. Returning to the kitchen, they found every drawer and cupboard flung open, knives and spoons scattered across the counter, as if rifled by frantic, unseen hands. The bedroom mirror, wide and polished, bore handprints, small, upside down, pressed high on the glass, far beyond their reach without a ladder. Erwin's fingers trembled as she wiped them away, the smudges gritty, like ash mixed with something that pulsed faintly under her touch. The house's malice grew tactile, its intrusions no longer content with shadows and sounds. Erwin began to notice Sable's behavior shifting. The cat avoided the hallway, her once lazy prowls replaced by wary crouches, her eyes tracking movements no human could see. Torin, too, seemed haunted, his face drawn, his breathing more labored, as if the house's weight pressed against his chest. One evening, as they sat in the living room, a glass on the coffee table slid an inch, its movement slow, deliberate, stopping when Erwin gasped. The air grew colder, the scent of dust and something metallic, blood perhaps or rust filling the room. Smell that air, heavy with the musk of something ancient, its intent a mystery. Erwin's skin prickled, the memory of that first cold, touch returning, as if the entity marked her as its own. The worst came one sleepless night as Erwin sat vigil by Torin's side, her eyes tracing the rise and fall of his chest. His breathing, strained by his condition, often slowed to a halt, only to resume with a gasping inhale that broke the silence. As his breaths faded, a heavy exhalation sounded behind her, deep and guttural, like a predator lurking in the dark. Feel that breath cold and close, its weight a chain around your heart. Her body froze, fear rooting her to the bed, but she didn't turn, the darkness too vast to face. The sound came again, closer, brushing her ear, and Sable bolted from the room, her hiss a sharp warning. Torin stirred, his eyes fluttering open, and whispered, "Did you hear it?" His voice cracked, revealing he'd heard it too, twice before, too terrified to speak. The house felt alive, its walls a canvas for something sinister, its breath a promise of harm. Erwin's desperation grew, her curiosity turning to dread. She tried to capture the entity, setting up a recorder one night, her hands shaking as she pressed the button. Sable, sensing the tension, leapt at her, claws grazing her arm, nearly stopping her heart. The recording caught nothing but static, a faint hum that seemed to pulse with intent. She and Torin shared stories of past encounters. His, a shadow, his old apartment that whispered his name, vanishing at dawn. Hers, a door in her childhood home that opened to a gust of frigid air, though no window was near. What claims the homes we build? Its touch a vow of return. The disturbances faded, after weeks leaving an uneasy quiet, but the house never felt the same. The mirror gleamed too brightly, the hallway too dark, the air too heavy with the scent of ash. Erwin began researching the house's past, digging through local records with a growing sense of unease. A fragment emerged, a family, decades ago, who'd fled after reporting touches and breaths in the night, their accounts dismissed as hysteria. Were they the entity's first victims, their fear feeding its strength? Erwin found a photograph in the archives, a faded image of the house, its windows dark, but one showed a smudge, like a face pressed against the glass. She didn't show Torin, but the image burned into her mind, its eyes too real, too alive. Picture it, your home a prison, its walls etched with the marks of what came before. Sable still avoids the spare room, her tail low, her gaze wary. Torin's breathing remains uneven, his sleep fractured by nightmares he won't share. The house is quiet now, but Erwin checks the mirrors each night, her fingers tracing the glass for new smudges. The cold touch lingers in her memory, a reminder that the dark never truly leaves. She keeps the recorder hidden, afraid to listen, afraid of what it might have caught. Torin holds her closer, but his warmth can't banish the chill that clings to her skin. As you walk through your own home, tonight feel the air against your neck. What hand reaches from the dark waiting to touch you again? The sunset painted the backyard in gold, a child's world where fear had no place. Sophie, barely 8, darted through the tall grass behind her family's home off Australia's Pacific Highway. The summer of 2007 alive with the hum of cicadas. The house, a modest brick structure, stood at the edge of a sprawling bushland, its vast backyard her kingdom. She chased the fading light, her laughter echoing, her bare feet stained with dirt. The forest loomed beyond, a tangle of eucalyptus and shadow. But to Sophie it was just another playground, a place where adventures waited. Her mother, bustling in the kitchen, kept watch through the window, her presence a steady anchor. Dusk was Sophie's favorite hour, when the world felt soft and endless and nothing could touch her. She was weaving a crown of dandelions when a voice cut through the evening's hum. Sophie. It was her mother's call, warm and familiar, the same tone that summoned her for dinner or baths. She dropped the flowers, her stomach rumbling with hope for lunch, and sprinted toward the house, the screen door banging behind her. Inside, her mother stood at the sink, hands deep in soapy water, her face calm. "What's the rush, love?" she asked, glancing up. Sophie frowned, catching her breath. "You called me." Her mother's hand stilled, her brow creasing. "I didn't call you, sweetie, maybe the neighbors." Sophie's chest tightened, a spark of doubt flaring. "It was you," she insisted, her voice sharp. "It sounded exactly like you." Her mother dried her hands, kneeling to meet her eyes, her tone gentle but firm. "Go play, love. Lunch is soon." Sophie's eyes stung, confusion turning to frustration, but she nodded, the doubt lingering like a shadow. The shadow grew darker. A week later, Sophie woke in the dead of night, her room cloaked in darkness, the air heavy with a stillness that pressed against her skin. A faint rhythmic tapping stirred her, sharp and deliberate, like nails on glass. She lay still, her heart thudding, straining to hear. The sound persisted, not the scurry of possums in the roof, common in their Australian home, but something closer, something intentional. Her eyes adjusted, scanning the room, her stuffed koala, her cluttered desk, the curtains swaying slightly. Then she saw it, in the corner of her vision at the window, a shape, thin as a blade, no wider than a ruler, its elongated arms stretched against the glass, its fingers unnaturally long, tapping with a slow, mocking rhythm. Its eyes, white glowing, unblinking, locked onto hers, piercing through the dark with a cold, predatory intent. Sophie's breath caught, her body frozen, her mind screaming that this was a dream, a trick of sleep. But the eyes held her, their gaze a weight that crushed her courage. "It's playing with me." The thought wasn't her own, it slithered into her mind, chilling her blood. The creature's form was black, featureless save for those eyes, its silhouette a mockery of anything. "Human?" It tapped again, the sound sharp, a taunt that said, I'm coming for you." Terror surged, shattering her paralysis. She yanked the blanket over her head, her screams tearing through the night, raw and unending. Footsteps pounded, the door flew open, and her mother's arms pulled her close, her voice frantic. "Sophie, what's wrong?" Sophie pointed to the window, her hand trembling, but the glass was empty, the night silent. "It was there," she sobbed, her words choked. "A thing with white eyes." Her mother checked the window, her face pale, and found nothing. No marks, no trace. She let Sophie sleep in her bed, the warmth of her presence a frail shield. Sophie didn't sleep, not that night, nor the next, her eyes fixed on the dark, waiting for those eyes to return. The image burned into her mind, as vivid now, 18 years later, as it was then. She slept with the TV on, the light a barrier against the fear that followed her into adulthood. She scoured folklore, chasing answers. Mimi spirits, shy guardians of the land, didn't fit. Bunyips tied to water were impossible without a swamp nearby. Skinwalkers whispered in foreign tales felt close, but Australia held no such legends. The voice, so like her mother's, and the creature at her window were one, she was sure. A thing that wore trust to lure her close. The bushland wasn't just a backdrop, it was a veil, hiding something that knew her name. Boredom was the worst kind of prison, especially when the world went dark. Liam slouched on the threadbare couch in his family's cramped living room, the summer heat of 2024 pressing against the walls of their suburban home. The power had been cut that morning, a casualty of unpaid bills, leaving the house in a stifling, unnatural silence. At 19, Liam was the odd man out in his devout family, uninterested in the church a street away where his older brothers, Mark and Daniel, spent their days. While they found solace in sermons and community, Liam found his in the scratch of pencil on paper, his sketchbook a refuge where dragons and starships took shape. His phone, barely charged, played lo-fi beats through earbuds, a faint rebellion against the stillness that enveloped the house. The living room, cluttered with mismatched furniture and faded photos, felt like a relic without electricity. The fridge was silent, the ceiling fan motionless, the air thick with the scent of warm wood and dust. Liam's brothers had left at dawn, their footsteps echoing as they headed to the church, a squat brick building visible from the front porch. He'd stayed behind, as always, content to lose himself in art rather than hymns. His mother was at work, her shift at the diner stretching into the evening, leaving Liam alone with his thoughts in the fading daylight. He sketched a winged serpent, its scales intricate, but the dimming light made it hard to see, the room sinking into a gray haze as the sun dipped below the horizon. He tossed the sketchbook aside, frustration gnawing at him. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that amplified every creak, every shift of the old structure. He rummaged through drawers for candles, his hands sifting through pens, receipts, and forgotten trinkets, but found nothing. The darkness crept closer, wrapping the house in a heavy, expectant stillness. Liam's unease grew, a faint prickle at the back of his neck, as if the empty rooms were watching. He shook it off, blaming the heat, but the feeling lingered, a whisper of something out of place. The church, so close he could hear its bells on Sundays, felt a world away, its safety out of reach. Then the door swung open. Footsteps crossed the threshold, steady and deliberate, and Liam looked up to see Mark stride through the living room, his face blank, his eyes fixed on the hallway. No greeting, no glance, just a silent march to his bedroom, the door closing, softly behind him. Liam frowned, puzzled by the lack of words, but Mark was often moody, his mind elsewhere after long days at church. He shrugged, returning to his phone. the music a thin shield against the house's oppressive quiet. Hours passed, the night deepening, the absence of light a weight that pressed against his chest. The room was nearly black now, the outlines of furniture barely discernible. Liam called out, his voice sharp in the stillness. "Mark, where's the candles?" No answer. The silence thickened, unnatural, as if the house were holding its breath. He tried again, louder, his unease sharpening into something closer to fear. Footsteps approached, quick and purposeful, and Mark emerged from the hallway, his expression unchanged, his eyes oddly flat. "Come on," he said, his voice unmistakable, but devoid of warmth. The same voice that had teased Liam as a kid, scolded him as a teen. He gestured to the back door, his movements precise. "We're fixing the power." Liam's brow furrowed, curiosity battling his growing discomfort. "What's the plan?" he asked, following Mark outside, the night air warm and heavy, the stars hidden behind a veil of clouds. The backyard was a patch of overgrown grass, the electricity meter a circular box bolted to the wall, its lock glinting faintly in the moonlight. "Get a screwdriver and pliers," Mark instructed, his tone clipped, almost mechanical. Liam hesitated, a flicker of doubt sparking in his mind. Since when does Mark know how to mess with the meter? He grabbed the tools from the shed, his hands, brushing against rusted shovels and tangled ropes, the darkness making every shadow seem alive. Mark stood by the meter, his silhouette sharp against the house, his gaze fixed on the lock. "Cut it," he said, pointing to the metal clasp. Liam complied, the pliers biting through the lock with a satisfying snap. "Now the seal," Mark continued, guiding him to remove a plastic cover, revealing a chip wedged between metal contacts. Liam's fingers trembled as he extracted it, the chip small but heavy, its purpose unclear. He replaced the cover, his heart pounding, and the house flared to life. Lights blazing, the hum of electricity, a sudden jarring relief. "Wow, that was easy," Liam said, a grin breaking through his unease. Mark didn't respond, his face unchanged, and turned back to the house, disappearing into his room without a word. Liam stood in the yard, the tools cold in his hands, a strange mix of pride and confusion swirling in his chest. The house glowed, its windows bright, but the air felt heavier, as if the light had revealed something it shouldn't. He headed inside, the warmth of the living room a stark contrast to the day's gloom, and settled on the couch, his sketchbook forgotten. Then his phone rang, Mark's name flashing on the screen. Liam answered, expecting a quip about the power. "Hey, we're staying at the church tonight," Mark said, his voice identical to the one that had just spoken, the cadence, the slight drawl, unmistakable. "Power's on there, food too. Come join us." Liam's grin froze, a cold dread seeping into his bones. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "At the church," Mark replied, a note of confusion in his tone. "Stop messing around," Liam snapped. But as he spoke, he realized no sound came from Mark's room. The house was silent, the air thick with a presence that wasn't his brother's. His legs weakened, his breath shallow, as he crept to the hallway, his eyes locked on the closed bedroom door. He's not there. The thought was a knife, cutting through his denial. His hands shook as he grabbed his jacket, his gaze darting to every corner, every shadow. The living room, once a sanctuary, felt like a trap, its walls closing in with every step. He moved, slowly, deliberately, as if any sound might summon the thing that had worn his brother's face. Tears stung his eyes, his lips trembling as he slipped outside, the night swallowing him whole. The street was empty, the church's steeple a faint outline against the sky. a beacon he'd ignored too long. At the church, Liam found Mark and Daniel in the fellowship hall, their faces paling as he collapsed, sobbing, a sight they'd never seen. He wasn't the crying type, but the fear poured out, raw and unstoppable. "I was with you," he choked, recounting the figure, the voice, the impossible task of fixing the power. They stared, their eyes wide, and confirmed. They'd been at the church all day, never left, never called until now. The thing that had stood beside him, spoken to him, wasn't human. Liam had followed its commands, his hands guided by something that knew his brother's voice, his brother's face, as if it had studied them for years. The memory of that night clung to him, a wound that refused to heal. He'd always been the skeptic, dismissing his brother's tales of faith, but this was different. It wasn't a ghost story or a prank. It was real, deliberate, a violation of the trust he'd placed in family. He thought of their mother's stories, whispered when he was younger, about strange happenings in the house, lights flickering when no one was home, footsteps in empty rooms. She'd laughed them off, but Liam wondered now if she'd seen something too, something she'd buried to keep them safe. The church became his refuge, its walls a barrier against the thing that had invaded their home. But at night, when the house was quiet, he felt it, a presence waiting, watching, as if it knew he'd obeyed once and might again. Homes are meant to cradle you, to shield you from the dark. But at 11 years old, I learned that even the familiar can turn sinister. In our apartment above the family pizza shop, something wore my sister's face, beckoned me into the shadows, and left a fear that's haunted me for decades. It wasn't human, and it wanted me to follow. I was 11, a kid caught between curiosity and the safety of routine. Our family lived in a cramped apartment above the pizza shop my parents ran, the scent of dough and marinara seeping through the floorboards. The building was old, its walls creaking with secrets, but it was home. The only way up was an outdoor staircase in the back parking lot, a rickety climb that led to our dining room. The apartment was a maze of rooms, dining room flowing into kitchen, kitchen into living room, and a long, narrow hallway to the bedrooms. Windows were scarce, casting the place in perpetual shadow, especially at night. That evening, I'd fallen, asleep in my mother's room, lulled by the hum of her radio. When I woke, the clock read 11 p.m., the news droning faintly from the dining room. The house was too quiet. I called out for my mother, my siblings, but silence answered. The apartment felt hollow, as if it held its breath. I shuffled to the dining room, the TV flickering with headlines, but no one was there. At the back door, I peered outside, spotting my stepfather tinkering with the family car under a street lamp's glow. "Where is everyone?" I turned back, my eyes catching a faint light spilling from the hallway leading to the bedrooms. It wasn't. The hallway bulb, too soft, too unnatural, like a glow that didn't belong. My curiosity pulled me forward, my bare feet cold against the linoleum. Something's there. The light pulsed gently, beckoning, and I stepped into the kitchen, my heart beating a little faster. That's when I saw her. A figure emerged from the hallway, dressed in my sister's familiar nightgown, the one she wore to bed. But she was glowing, her form bathed in a sickly pale light that seemed to come from within. This isn't right. I called her name, my voice small, but she didn't answer. She tilted her head, her movements slow, deliberate, her face obscured by the angle of the doorway. I thought maybe she was playing a trick, holding a flashlight under her gown. But the glow was too even, too otherworldly. I stepped closer, now in the living room, and called again, irritation creeping into my voice. She stayed silent, her head tilting further, as if studying me. Why won't she speak? She stood at the threshold between the living room and hallway, her lower half hidden behind the couch, her presence both familiar and alien. She moved then, gliding backward into the hallway, her finger curling in a slow, deliberate gesture to follow. Come with me. The invitation was silent but undeniable. A pull I felt in my bones. Against my better judgment, I followed, my footsteps hesitant, the glow intensifying as I neared the hallway. The air grew heavy, the shadows thicker, as if the apartment itself was closing in. I was 8 feet away when I saw it. Her nightgown ended in empty air, no legs, no feet, just a flowing fabric that hung unnaturally, swaying in a breeze that didn't exist. She's floating. My breath caught, terror flooding my veins, my mind screaming that this wasn't my sister, wasn't human. Her glowing form pulsed, her finger still beckoning, urging me deeper into the dark. I stumbled back, my heart pounding, my eyes locked on her until I reached the living room doorway. Get out. The glow vanished, not fading but blinking out as if a switch had been flipped. In that same instant, the metal door of the pizza shop below slammed shut, the sound jolting me like a gunshot. I ran to the back door, my hands shaking as I peered outside. There, climbing the stairs, were my mother, younger brother, and my sister, wearing a different outfit, her face tired but real. It wasn't her. I stood frozen, the truth sinking in, my mind reeling with what I'd seen. I told them everything, my voice trembling, but they had no answers. My sister, alive and well, looked at me with confusion, her presence a stark contrast to the glowing thing in the hallway. I didn't sleep in my room for a week, avoiding that hallway like a plague. The apartment never felt the same, its shadows deeper, its silence heavier. I was awake, not dreaming, not hallucinating, yet what I saw defied explanation. Was it a ghost? A demon? Something older that wore my sister's face to lure me? I've carried this memory for over 20 years, its weight growing with each retelling. In my dreams, I'm back in that hallway, the glowing figure waiting, its finger curling, its light pulling me closer. It's still there. The pizza shop is gone now. The apartment empty, but I know it lingers, watching from the dark, waiting for me to step back into its reach. The gym was a sanctuary, a place to shed stress under the hum of machines, but that afternoon it became a trap. I'd always felt safe there, surrounded by familiar faces and the rhythm of routine. But safety is a fragile thing, easily shattered by a stranger's gaze. Last week, as I stepped out into the fading light, a man's shadow fell across my path, and the world I trusted twisted into something dark. This isn't a story you forget. It's a fear that follows you, lurking just out of sight. The air was crisp, carrying the first chill of autumn as I left the gym, my muscles sore but my mind clear. The parking lot stretched out before me, a grid of cars glinting under the sodium glow of streetlights, their beams cutting through the dusk. I adjusted my gym bag, my phone buzzing with a text from my boyfriend, Lucas. "Home soon?" he asked, and I smiled, typing a quick reply. "Just leaving. Be there in 20. But as I stepped through the gym's glass doors, a man held one open for me, his gesture polite, almost chivalrous. He's just being kind, I thought, nodding a thanks. But his presence lingered, a weight I couldn't shake. He was middle-aged, well-dressed in a pressed jacket and slacks, an odd contrast to the sweat-soaked gym crowd. His accent, thick and European, maybe Eastern, I couldn't place it, rolled off his tongue as he struck up a conversation. "Nice day for a workout, isn't it?" he said, his voice smooth, his smile practiced. I nodded, keeping my answers short, my eyes on the path to my car. Just small talk, I told myself, but his steps matched mine. His pace deliberate, as if he'd planned to walk this way all along. The parking lot was quiet, the other gym-goers already gone, and a prickle of unease crept up my spine. "Keep walking, Emma." But his questions shifted, the politeness peeling away like a mask. "You here alone? Single, maybe?" His tone was light, but his eyes were sharp, searching, and my stomach tightened. "No, I'm not," I said, forcing a smile, my voice steadier than I felt. "I have a boyfriend." I quickened my pace, the asphalt cool under my sneakers, but he kept up, his shadow stretching beside mine. "You'd leave him for me, wouldn't?" "You?" he said, his voice dropping, a grin spreading across his face. "You're beautiful. I could take care of you." The words were a violation, his smile feeding on my discomfort, and I felt my face twist, betraying my fear. "Get to your car." I forced out a reply, my voice clipped. "I'm happy, thanks." My car was 4 spaces away, its familiar shape a beacon in the dim lot. Just run, I thought. But the lot was empty, no one to hear me, no one to help. "Give me your number," he said, pulling out his phone, his fingers quick, as if he'd done this before. "I'll text you in case you change your mind." His grin widened, a predator's glee, and I shook my head, my voice firm despite the tremor. "No, thank you, excuse me." I sped up, half jogging now, my heart pounding as I glanced back. He'd stopped, standing by a car 1 space from mine. His eyes locked on me, unblinking. He's watching. He's waiting. My gut screamed it, a warning I couldn't ignore. I reached my car, my hands fumbling with the keys, the metal slipping. In my sweaty palms. "Unlock it, get in." The lock clicked and I yanked the door open, but as I did, he moved, speed-walking toward me. His steps silent but swift. He's coming. Fear surged, a wave that drowned my thoughts, and I threw myself inside, slamming the door and locking it in one motion. My hand shook as I jammed the key into the ignition, the engine roaring to life. "Go, Emma. Go now." I shifted, to reverse, not checking behind me, my eyes fixed on him as he reached my door, his hand brushing the handle. He's too close. I hit the gas, the car lurching backward, tires screeching as I swung out of the space. In the rearview mirror, I saw him pull out his phone, its flash cutting through the dusk as he aimed it at my car. He's taking a picture. The thought was a jolt, a violation that made my skin crawl, my license plate. I accelerated, the parking lot blurring as I sped toward the exit, my breath ragged, my hands trembling on the wheel. He knows my car. He could find me. The streetlights flashed by, their glow no longer safe, and I drove, checking my mirrors, half expecting to see him behind me. "You're safe now." But I wasn't. The fear clung to me, a weight that didn't lift when I reached my apartment, locked the door, and sank to the floor. What did he want? The question looped, unanswered. Trafficking, stalking, something worse? I had no pepper spray, no weapon, nothing but my instincts, and they'd barely been enough. I called Lucas, my voice shaking as I told him everything. His anger a distant comfort through the phone. "Don't go back to that gym," he said, and I nodded, though he couldn't see. "I won't. I can't. Let me take you back to another day years ago. I was 15, walking home from school, when a man in a car slowed beside me, his window down, his voice too friendly. "Need a ride?" he asked, and I ran, my heart pounding, until I reached my house. Was it him? The memory is a shadow. A warning I didn't heed, and now it's sharper. A reminder that danger wears many faces. I checked my locks twice now, my windows, my life. He's out there, somewhere with a picture of my car. The gym, once my refuge, is a place I'll never Return to its parking lot a graveyard of trust. Some fears don't fade. They grow roots and they stay. A hollow knock echoed through the silence, not from a neighbor or a gust of wind, but from something deliberate, its rhythm slicing the stillness like a blade. Nivian's eyes snapped open, her body rigid on the couch, the faint glow of her laptop casting jagged shadows across her small apartment. It was 3 a.m., the hour when the world held its breath. But that sound, 3 precise taps on her front door, marked the moment her refuge became a stage for an unseen presence, its intent cloaked in the dark. Nivian, 28, lived alone on the 3rd floor of a modest apartment building, her life a quiet rhythm of late-night work and solitary evenings. She'd never feared the dark, her small space a haven of worn furniture and soft light, shared only with her cat, Shade, whose purring warmth was her constant companion. That night, a month ago, she'd been up late, her fingers dancing across the keyboard, the hum of a forgotten show fading into the background. Hear that silence, the world asleep, its quiet a canvas for what stirs unseen. The first knocks came softly, 3 distinct taps, sharp enough to pierce her focus. Living on. The 3rd floor, unannounced visitors were rare, and her neighbors were not the type to wander at such an hour. She dismissed it, a misheard noise, a neighbor's stumble, but her pulse quickened, a flicker of unease settling in her chest. 10 minutes later, the knocks returned, louder, more insistent, each one a demand that echoed in her bones. Nivian rose, her bare feet cold on the hardwood, and flicked on the hallway light, its glare harsh against the night. She pressed her eye to the peephole, her breath shallow, but the hallway beyond was empty, its fluorescent hum unbroken. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady but unanswered, swallowed by the silence. Feel that moment, the weight of an empty answer, the dread of what might linger just out of sight. She didn't open the door. Instinct kept it locked, but the air felt heavier, as if the apartment held its breath. Returning to the couch, she tried to shake the feeling, blaming a prankster or a drunken wanderer, but her hands trembled as she reached for her laptop. The 3rd set of knocks came 10 minutes later, each one a thunderclap shaking the door in its frame. Nivian's heart raced, her palms slick with sweat as she checked the peephole again. Nothing, only the sterile hallway, its stillness mocking her fear. She turned on every light, the apartment blazing, but the brightness couldn't banish the chill that clung to her skin. Sitting rigid, she waited, her eyes darting to the door, expecting the knocks to return. They didn't, but as she moved to bed, she noticed the small mirror by the front door, a cheap oval for last-minute checks, tilted slightly, its angle wrong, as if nudged by an unseen hand. See it now. The mirror's slant, a silent violation of your space. She straightened it, her fingers lingering on the glass, its surface colder than it should be, but dismissed it as her own oversight. The next night, at exactly 3 a.m., the knocks came again. 3, sharp and unrelenting. Nivian checked the peephole, found nothing, but the mirror was tilted once more, its angle precise, deliberate. Her stomach churned, the apartment's walls seeming to close in, their familiarity warped by the unseen. Shade usually sprawled on the couch, crouched low, her eyes fixed on the door, a soft growl rumbling in her throat. The 3rd night mirrored the 2nd. Knocks, empty hallway, tilted mirror, each event a thread in a pattern that frayed Nivian's nerves. She questioned her neighbors, their faces genuine in their confusion, denying any pranks or noises. She had no history of sleepwalking, no habits of drink or drugs to blur her mind. The apartment, once her sanctuary, felt like a cage, its silence a lie hiding something that watched. Desperate for proof, Nivian placed a strip of tape across the mirror's edge on the fourth night, her hands shaking as she pressed it flat. At 3 a.m., the knocks returned. 3 blows that rattled her core. The peephole showed nothing, but the mirror hung askew, the tape torn, its edges jagged, as if ripped by fingers that weren't hers. Touch that tape, its broken edge, a proof of what you cannot see. Nivian's breath caught, her mind racing, ghost prank madness. She didn't call the police, the evidence too fleeting, but sleep became a stranger. Her night spent with every light blazing, shade pressed against her side. The knocks ceased after that night. 3 weeks of silence following, but the apartment never felt the same. Nivian checked the mirror daily, its surface a silent oracle, its alignment a test of her reality. She recalled a story from her mother, a great aunt who'd heard knocks in her home always at 3 a.m., until she moved, the sound following her like a curse. What calls to you in the dead of night? Its knocks a summons you can't answer. The mirror remains straight now, but Nivian keeps the lights on, her eyes tracing the door, waiting for the rhythm to return. In a single moment, my boyfriend revealed a secret I'd never shared, his words chilling me to the core. This is a story of a love that turned to suspicion, a shadow that still follows me. Take a deep breath and imagine lying in bed, gazing at the stars, thinking you're alone, only to realize someone has been watching. It began with romance, but ended with a fear I can't shake. I'd been dating Ethan for a few weeks, a whirlwind romance that felt like a dream. Feel the rush of new love, the way it sweeps you off your feet. We'd met online, our conversations flowing effortlessly, our shared interests, books, hobbies, even the smallest habits, making me believe I'd found my soulmate. See his smile through the screen, warm and inviting, pulling you closer. He lived an hour away, and one weekend, I invited him to my place to pack for a stay at his. As I gathered my things in my bedroom, the air filled with the scent of lavender. From a candle on my dresser, Ethan stood by the door, his gaze wandering over the space. Picture my room, cozy with fairy lights, the window overlooking a forest beyond. I rolled up my blinds to let in the fading daylight, the trees outside casting long shadows across the floor. Then out of nowhere, Ethan spoke, his voice casual but laced with something unsettling. "So, do you often roll up your blinds at night and lie at the other end of the bed to look at the stars? I bet you use that lamp the most." It's the only one I'd choose. My heart stopped. Feel the air grow cold, the words sinking in like a blade. That exact routine, rolling up the blinds, lying at the bed's foot to gaze at the stars, was something I'd done just the night before. A private moment I'd never shared with anyone, not even my closest friends. What if someone had been there, watching you in the dark? I forced a laugh, my voice trembling as I asked how he knew, but he shrugged, his smile too calm, too knowing before changing the subject. See his eyes, glinting with a secret he won't share. The rest of the weekend, I couldn't shake the thought, had he been watching me? Feel the paranoia creeping in, the weight of unseen eyes. I hid my fear, playing the part of a carefree girlfriend, but the moment I returned home, I tore through my room, searching for any sign of intrusion. Run your hands over every surface, looking for something that doesn't belong. I checked for hidden cameras behind picture frames, under the bed, in the lamp he'd mentioned, but found nothing. There were no laptops, TVs, or security cameras in my room to hack. My phone had been on the nightstand, its screen dark, its camera facing down. What if he'd found another way, a way you couldn't see? My room was on the second floor, too high for anyone to peer in easily, and the dense forest behind my house, its towering trees blocking any clear view, made physical stalking unlikely. Picture the forest, its branches like a shield, yet hiding. Something sinister within. Still, nothing made sense. I tried to dismiss it as a coincidence, a lucky guess, but the unease lingered, a shadow I couldn't outrun. Feel the doubt gnawing at you, the question that won't let go. Looking back, I saw the signs I'd ignored. Our first phone call had been too perfect, our shared interest too precise, as if he'd studied me before we met. Hear his voice, smooth and calculated, mirroring your every word. He'd swept me off my feet, making me feel alive, only to reveal a darker side overnight, a narcissist whose mask slipped, leaving me shattered. See the change, the warmth in his eyes turning cold, manipulative. We texted on and off for years after, but I eventually cut all contact, unable to bear the weight of his presence. A friend named Claire later warned me about men who use charm to control, their knowledge a tool to invade your life. Hear her voice, cautious but firm, her words a mirror to your fears. I'll never know how Ethan knew my secret, but the thought of him watching me, then or now, keeps me looking over my shoulder. Close your eyes but feel his gaze, a shadow that never leaves. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, but their echoes never fade. In the dim light of an old trailer, I saw my boyfriend watching me from the shadows, but he was already by my side. This is a story of a home that whispered its secrets through moving objects and ghostly doubles, a presence I can't ignore. Take a deep breath and imagine a house where the walls seem to breathe, where nothing stays where you left it. It began with small disturbances, but grew into a terror that haunts my nights. In November 2021, I moved into my boyfriend Mark's trailer, a weathered relic tucked away in a quiet corner of town. Feel the chill of an old space, the air heavy with the scent of aged wood and secrets. From the moment I stepped inside, I sensed something lingering, a presence that didn't feel threatening but wasn't entirely benign either. Have you ever walked into a room and felt something watching, even when you're alone? I'd always had a knack for sensing the unexplainable, a lifetime of brushes with the paranormal sharpening my intuition, though I often dismissed them as tricks of the mind. Picture those moments, the flicker of a shadow, the unease you can't shake. At first, the trailer seemed reluctant to reveal its secrets, its silence a deceptive calm that lulled me into a false sense of security. But soon the disturbances began. Small, inexplicable things that crept into my daily life. Feel the unease grow, the way it seeps into every quiet moment. Items I'd placed on the counter would shift to the table overnight. Cabinet doors I'd firmly closed would creak open by morning, and faint shadows danced in my peripheral vision, vanishing when I turned to look. See the shadows move just out of reach, teasing your sanity. A few months ago, the disturbances took a darker turn. Mark and I were in our bedroom, the dim glow of a bedside lamp casting soft light across the walls, ready to drift into sleep. Picture the room, cozy yet cramped, the air thick with the weight of the night. I slipped out to the kitchen for a glass of water, the trailer's narrow hallway stretching before me, the bedroom door visible at its end. As I filled my glass, the faucet dripping softly, I glanced toward the hallway and froze. Feel your heart skip, the air turning to ice. Mark's silhouette stood at the door frame, his head tilted as if watching me, his eyes hidden in shadow. See him, a figure too still, too wrong. I thought he was playing a prank, a mischievous game to startle me. But when I returned to the bedroom, he was under the covers, his breathing steady, completely unaware of my question. Why were you watching me from the doorway? His confusion was genuine. He hadn't left the bed, and he wasn't the type to play such tricks. Feel the dread settle in. The realization that you saw something that wasn't him. The next day deepened my unease. I'd gone out in the morning to grab coffee and do laundry. The trailer quiet as I left. The dogs settled in their routine. Picture: the trailer in daylight, deceptively peaceful. The dogs curled up in their crates. When I returned, the air felt different, heavier, as if the space had shifted in my absence. I stepped into the entryway and stopped. Every shoe on the rack had been removed, placed neatly on the floor in a perfect row, as if someone had arranged them with care. See the shoes, lined up like a silent message, their order unnatural. I blamed the dogs at first, a convenient explanation. But then I noticed the crate of our trained dog, a heavy metal box that should have been in the living room. It was now in the kitchen, dragged across the floor, its door ajar. Feel your stomach drop, the impossibility sinking in. The dog couldn't have moved it, not on his own. And both dogs were pacing nervously, their eyes wide with a fear I'd never seen in them before. Hear their anxious whines, a sound that mirrors your growing dread. That night, the trailer's secrets became undeniable. As Mark and I walked into the bedroom, the air thick with an unspoken tension, I glanced toward the closet, and there he was again. Mark, peering out from the shadows, his face half hidden, his gaze fixed on me. See him, a doppelganger in the dark, his presence a violation of reality. My blood ran cold, but before I could speak, I felt Mark's hand on my shoulder. He was right behind me, stepping into the room with me. Feel the panic surge, the impossibility choking you. I turned back, but the figure in the closet was gone, leaving only an empty space where it had stood. What if it had been waiting for you all along, wearing his face? I tried to dismiss it as trick of my mind, but the trailer felt alive now, its presence undeniable. A friend named Jenna, who'd lived in a similar trailer, once told me of objects moving on their own, of shadows mimicking her loved ones, a haunting she'd fled from. Hear her voice, trembling with the memory, her warning echoing in your mind. I plan to smudge the house this weekend, hoping to cleanse whatever lingers here, but I've never faced anything like this before. Close your eyes, but feel the trailer around you, its walls closing in. The doppelganger, the moving objects, they're proof something is here, and I fear it's only just begun to show itself. Some nights the darkness holds more than shadows. It holds things that watch, that wait, that know you're there. At 17, I stood frozen under a street lamp, staring at a creature that shouldn't exist, its red eyes burning into my soul. What I saw wasn't a trick of my mind. It was real, and someone else saw it too. My world has always been a blur of the real and the unreal. Since I was 13, I've seen things, shapes in the dark, whispers in the quiet, that no one else could explain. My family's history of mental illness hung over me like a curse, each strange encounter dismissed as a hallucination, even when it left me trembling. What if it wasn't just in my head? By 17, medication had quieted the visions, but one night, under a lonely street lamp, I learned that some things are too real to ignore. Imagine a house in the middle of nowhere, the night alive with secrets. That's where it began. We'd just returned from a family vacation, our large household, 8 of us under one roof, exhausted and restless. It was late, past midnight, and we agreed to shower before bed. I volunteered to go last, craving solitude after days of chaos. Step outside, feel the cool air, the vast emptiness around you. I sat on the front steps, the only light a flickering street lamp casting a pale glow over the driveway. Our house stood alone, fields stretching endlessly into the dark, the nearest neighbor miles away. The night was still save for a faint hum in the air, a tension I couldn't place. Something's watching. I ignored the unease, my mind drifting, until a sound broke the silence. Coyotes, their howls rising from the fields, wild and mournful. Listen to their song. Feel it stir something primal. I stayed, drawn to the eerie melody, but a knot tightened in my stomach, a warning I should have heeded. Then, terror took hold, a wave so fierce it stole my breath. My body froze, my gaze pulled to the road. There it was, a figure, 10 feet tall, its skeletal frame impossibly thin, its arms and legs stretched like branches in a nightmare. Its eyes, glowing red, vast as moons, burned through the darkness, unblinking, alive with a hunger I couldn't comprehend. See it glide, hovering above the ground, silent as death. It moved at the pace of a slow car, its body rigid, floating a foot above the asphalt, leaving no trace, no sound. Feel your heart stop, the air turning to ice. It passed the house, its crimson gaze fixed ahead, as if drawn by some unseen purpose. I couldn't move, my limbs locked, my mind screaming that this wasn't real, couldn't be real. But it was. Minutes later, the spell broke and I bolted inside, my breath ragged, my hands shaking. I told no one, not my family, not my friends, only my doctor, convinced it was another cruel trick of my mind. A year passed, the memory buried but never gone. I moved in with my sister and her husband, their home a refuge in a small town. Picture, a quiet street, the glow of streetlights, the hum of a bike ride. One night at 11:30 p.m., he and I cycled through the empty roads, sharing stories of the strange and unexplainable. Feel the cool breeze, the thrill of the night. I told him about the creature, the one I called the Coyote Man, describing its towering frame, its silent glide. As I spoke of its red eyes, his face changed, his eyes widening with recognition. Watch him freeze, the truth dawning. He raised his hand, circling his eyes, and whispered, "Big red eyes." My blood ran cold. Feel the chill, the weight of his words. He'd seen it too, at 19, after hearing coyotes howl in the fields. It had chased him, its long limbs closing the gap as he ran, terror driving him faster than he'd ever moved. Hear his panting, the fear in his voice. He'd climbed a silo, hiding at the top for hours, waiting for it to return. It never did, but the memory scarred him. I stopped my bike, his words echoing in my mind. This wasn't just me. I'd never told anyone but my doctor, yet he'd seen the same creature, felt the same dread. What is it? A spirit, a demon, something older than the fields we called home. The coyotes' howls, the red eyes, the silent glide, they were pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve. Close your eyes, but see those eyes, glowing in the dark. I've never seen it again, but it's there, in my dreams, gliding down that road, its gaze turning toward me. He hears the coyotes sometimes, his face paling, and I know he's thinking of it too. It's out there, waiting, and it knows we saw it. At 4:30 a.m., in the eerie stillness of a long corridor, I saw my roommate standing where she shouldn't have been. A smile that wasn't hers chilling me to the bone. This is a tale of a morning that turned into a haunting mystery. A shadow I can't unsee. Take a deep breath and imagine a darkened hallway where the air feels too heavy and someone watches from the shadows. It began with a routine, but ended with a terror that lingers in my mind. In the early days of my career, I joined an internship in a small, sleepy town where the company housed a few of us in a modified apartment. Feel the excitement of a new chapter, the quiet hum of a town waking up. They'd combined 2 apartments into one, creating a strange layout with 3 bedrooms and a bathroom on each side. connected by a long, narrow corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly in the dim light. See the corridor in your mind, its walls lined with peeling paint, the shadows pooling at its far end. Toward the end of our assignment, my roommates and I were preparing for a group presentation, a final task that had us all on edge. We decided to head to the office early to practice, setting our alarms for 4:30 a.m., determined to make the most of the quiet hours. Feel the weight of responsibility, the stillness of a sleeping apartment. Simna, one of my roommates, and I woke up first, each claiming a bathroom to get ready. I didn't mind taking the one at the far end of the corridor, gathering my toiletries and padding down the hall in the pre-dawn silence. The others still asleep in their rooms. Hear the soft creak of the floorboards, the faint hum of a distant clock. Simna headed to the bathroom on our side, her movements quiet as we avoided waking the others. The 2 bedrooms on the far end empty, their doors closed. I set my things on the bathroom counter, the fluorescent light casting a harsh glow over the cracked tiles, when I realized I'd forgotten my towel. Feel the annoyance, the small inconvenience that shifts everything. I stepped back into the corridor, the darkness thicker now, the single overhead light flickering at the far end. And then I saw her, Simna, standing in the middle of the corridor, her back to me, her silhouette unnervingly still. Pause. Feel the air grow cold, the wrongness of the moment sinking in. Something was off. The way she stood, rigid and unmoving, sent a shiver down my spine. The hair on my arm standing on end as a primal warning surged through me. What if she wasn't Simna at all? I must have made a sound, a gasp or a shuffle, because she turned her head, slowly, deliberately, and I saw her face. It was Simna, but not Simna. Her features were hers, yet twisted, her smile too wide, a smirk that held no warmth, only a chilling malice. See her eyes, glinting with something unnatural, her smile a threat in the dark. My voice trembled as I stammered, "Hey, what's going on?" But I was already backing into the bathroom, the light and steam from the hot water my only refuge, a makeshift weapon against whatever stood before me. Feel your heart pound, the instinct to flee overwhelming you. I locked the door, my hands shaking, and pressed my back against it, whispering prayers into the silence as the minutes stretched on. 20, maybe 25, each second an eternity. Hear the eye. Silence broken only by your ragged breathing, the fear that it's still out there. A knock finally came. Not Simna's voice, but another roommate's asking if I was done. I didn't answer, too shaken to speak, my mind reeling with what I'd seen. When I finally emerged, I walked down the corridor, my steps tentative, and saw Simna in her room getting ready as if nothing had happened. See her now, so normal, so unaware, the contrast jarring. I confronted her, my voice trembling. "You scared me out there. What were you doing?" But her confusion was genuine. She hadn't been in the corridor, hadn't left her room. Feel the dread deepen, the realization that it wasn't her. I didn't know Simna well, but I knew she wasn't a prankster. And at 4:30 a.m., with a presentation looming, she had no reason to play such a game. She maintained her innocence throughout the internship, her eyes wide with confusion each time I brought it up, leaving me with a mystery I couldn't solve. A friend named Tara, who'd lived in shared housing during her own internship once, told me of a similar experience, a figure mimicking her roommate standing in a hallway at dawn, its smile too wide, too wrong. Hear her voice low and haunted, her story a mirror to your own. To this day, I don't know what I saw in that corridor, but its smirk haunts me, a shadow that lingers in the corners of my mind. Close your eyes but see that smile, waiting in the dark. Was it a doppelganger, a ghost, or something darker? Walk away but feel its gaze, a mystery that never lets go. Homes are meant to hold you, to keep the world's darkness at bay. But in our weathered 1970s house, the darkness lived inside, its whispers growing into roars that shook the walls. 5 years ago I met her, a child who wasn't there. Her voice a haunting melody that still pulls me toward the shadows, begging me to stay forever. We claimed the house in the early 2000s, a relic from the 1970s with sagging floors and wallpaper, curling like old skin. It wasn't grand, but it was ours. A sanctuary where family laughter drowned out the creaks and groans of its aging bones. Things went missing. A key left on the counter, a scarf draped over a chair, a child's toy. Vanished without trace. The ghosts took them, we'd laugh, blaming unseen hands for the house's quirks. Doors would ease shut on their own. There, hinges exhaling in the quiet, and we'd dismiss it as the house settling, its quirks as familiar as our own. Just old wiring, we'd say, ignoring the chill that lingered in the air, the prickle on our skin when we turned out the lights. But 5 years ago, the house stopped pretending. It was awake and it was angry. The change crept in like a fog, subtle but suffocating. At night, soft footsteps danced down the hallway, too light to belong to any of us, fading when we strained to hear. Scratches clawed from the second floor, sharp and deliberate, echoing inside the walls as if something trapped scratched for freedom. We don't have rats. The sounds were a language we couldn't decipher, a secret the house guarded with jealous care. Each step, each scrape, tightened a knot of dread in my chest, a warning that the house was no longer ours. Something else lives here. I'd lie awake, the darkness pressing against me. The silence no longer a refuge but a threat, heavy with unseen eyes. One afternoon 3 years back, I sat alone in the living room, the TV's murmur my only company. The house was too still. A cataclysmic boom erupted from above, a sound so violent I thought the ceiling had caved in. The lights flickered, the TV blinked, and a tremor shook the floor, rattling my bones. What broke? I climbed the stairs, my pulse roaring, expecting chaos, a shattered wardrobe, a collapsed shelf. Nothing. The rooms were untouched, the air thick with an unnatural calm that mocked my fear. What made that sound? I searched every corner, every closet, but the house offered no answers, its silence a challenge I couldn't meet. The bangs returned, weeks apart, then months, always the same. Earth-shaking, felt only downstairs, never above. My family would call, accusing me of slamming doors I hadn't touched, their voices sharp with frustration. The house is lying. The shadows began to show themselves a year ago. I was in my brother's room, folding his clothes, when I saw her, a girl no older than 3, curled on his bed. She doesn't belong. Her blonde hair fanned across the pillow, her tiny arm dangled over the edge, her breath soft and steady, as if she'd always been there. She was vivid, tangible, a child I could have reached out and touched. Who is she? My heart pounded as I stepped closer, my breath shallow, but as my shadow crossed her, she dissolved, the air turning frigid where she'd lain, not my mind. Her image burned into me, her presence a weight that followed me through the house, a whisper I couldn't silence. I told myself it was a trick, a fleeting illusion. But the house had other plans. The encounters grew bolder. One evening, alone in the kitchen, I found a child's drawing on the counter. A crude sketch of a house, a stick figure with long hair standing inside. I didn't draw this. The paper was old, yellowed as if pulled from a forgotten box, but no one in the family claimed it. Days later in the hallway, a small handprint appeared on the mirror, too tiny to be ours, smudged as if pressed in haste. She's leaving signs. I tried to ignore them, to cling to reason, but the house wouldn't let me. 3 weeks ago, at dusk, a sharp knock echoed from the front door. No one's coming. I crossed the hallway, my steps cautious when the door creaked, then closed, and a voice, bright, childlike, called, "Hello," as if stepping into her own home. My blood froze. Chills raced down my spine, my hand trembling as I gripped the knob. I flung the door open, expecting my brother, but the porch was empty. The evening still. She's inside. The house hasn't relented. Banging erupts downstairs. When I'm above, a rhythm that feels alive, deliberate, like a heartbeat in the walls. Doors I lock nudge open, then snap shut when I stare, as if taunting me. She's watching. Objects shift. A cup left on the table found on the floor. A book, open to a page I didn't mark. My dreams are vivid, turbulent. Her blonde hair flickering in the corners. Her voice calling my name. Her small hand reaching from the shadows. Come play. I wake tangled in sheets. My heart racing. The room colder than it should be. I've tried, speaking to her, whispering pleas for peace into the dark, but the house only grows louder, its walls humming with a presence I can't name. What does she want? I'm not exaggerating when I say I'm afraid. The house isn't ours anymore. It's hers, claimed by the child who lingers in the shadows, her footsteps echoing in the quiet, her voice a melody that pulls me closer. I've searched for answers, dug through old records. But the house's history is a blank slate, its secrets buried deeper than I can reach. She was here before us. Sometimes in the dead of night I hear her giggle, soft and fleeting, from the hallway. I've stopped going downstairs alone, stopped trusting the locks, stopped believing the house will ever let her go. And I'm terrified. She's waiting, her small hand outstretched, ready to pull me into her world where the shadows never fade.